I'm Jessica Mitchell, 28, and I never thought I'd be disowned by text message. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. with a message from my mother. "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings or contact us. We're done." I stared at those words until sunrise, replaying the family dinner from the night before. Nothing seemed unusual. We laughed. We ate my grandmother's lasagna recipe. We talked about cousin Amanda's upcoming wedding. What could have possibly happened in those few hours that would make my entire family cut me off without warning? If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when your world collapses around you, you know exactly how I felt staring at that text. I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you've ever experienced family betrayal like this. Hit subscribe if you want to follow my journey from being completely cut off to finding out the shocking truth behind my family's decision. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this ends. To understand why that text message felt like a bullet to my heart, you need to know a bit about the Mitchell family. I'm the middle child, sandwiched between my older brother Ryan, who's 32, and my little sister Katie, 24. In our family photo albums, you can see the pattern clearly. Ryan in his pressed shirts with academic medals, me with my mismatched creative outfits, and Katie with her perfect dresses and ribbons in her hair. My parents, Barbara and Thomas Mitchell, built their life around appearances and tradition in our upper-middle-class Connecticut neighborhood. Dad worked his way up to senior management at an insurance company, while Mom dedicated herself to being the perfect homemaker and community volunteer. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn was featured twice in local home tours, something my mother mentioned at every opportunity. "Family loyalty comes before everything" was practically our family motto. My father would say it while carving the Sunday roast, and my mother would repeat it when coaching us before family gatherings. "Mitchells stick together," they'd say, especially when faced with any outside criticism. I was always the square peg in the round hole of our family. When Ryan went to Yale for business like Dad, and Katie headed to Boston College for communications, I broke tradition by moving to Chicago for art school. I still remember the tight smile on my mother's face when I announced my decision at dinner. "Art isn't a career, Jessica. It's a hobby," she said, cutting her chicken into perfect little squares. "But I suppose you've always needed to learn things the hard way." That was 8 years ago. And despite building a successful career as a graphic designer for a major marketing agency, my parents still introduced me as Jessica, who's still figuring things out. Meanwhile, Ryan could do no wrong with his investment banking job and marriage to Meredith, a doctor from a good family. And Katie, the baby, was coddled and praised for her entry-level PR job that Mom's friend had secured for her. The real trouble started when I began dating Derek 2 years ago. He's brilliant, kind, and works as an architect. He's also divorced with a 7-year-old daughter named Zoe, and he's black. My family never said anything overtly racist, they're too polite for that, but the concerns were thinly veiled. "I'm just worried about you raising another woman's child," Mom said during one phone call. "Are you sure you want to take on someone with so much history?" Dad asked, his emphasis making it clear he wasn't talking about Derek's previous marriage. And Katie, who usually parroted whatever Mom said, texted me, "Don't you want someone fresh and uncomplicated, like Amanda's fiancé Greg?" Every monthly family dinner became an exercise in restraint. I'd drive the 2 hours from Chicago to Connecticut, sit through subtle digs about my relationship, my career, my apartment, even my hairstyle choices, then drive back feeling drained. But I kept going because, despite everything, they were my family. My relationship with my mother was the most strained. Barbara Mitchell prided herself on controlling every aspect of family life. She managed my father's social calendar, chose Ryan's extracurriculars growing up, selected Katie's college courses, and tried her best to micromanage my life from afar through daily phone calls I increasingly let go to voicemail. The night before I received that text, we had our usual monthly dinner. It seemed normal, tense in the usual places, but nothing extraordinary. Mom had prepared grandmother's lasagna recipe. Dad poured the wine he'd been saving. Ryan talked about his recent promotion. And Katie showed off the expensive watch her boyfriend had given her for their anniversary. The main topic was cousin Amanda's wedding, now just 6 weeks away. "Jessica, you'll need to get your dress altered," Mom said, eyeing me over her wine glass. "You've put on a bit of weight since the fitting." I hadn't, but I just smiled and nodded. Typical mom comment. "And please do something appropriate with your hair. Those highlights are a bit creative for a family wedding." "They're for a client project, Mom. They'll be gone by the wedding," I explained, though I had no intention of changing my hair. There was a moment when Mom and Katie exchanged a look after I excused myself to use the upstairs bathroom, but I thought nothing of it at the time. The dinner ended with the usual hugs and drive-safe comments. Dad seemed distracted. Mom was already planning the next gathering. Ryan left early for a conference call, and Katie was glued to her phone as usual. Nothing that would explain why. Just hours later, I would be reading a text telling me I was no longer part of the family. I remember every detail of that moment. It was 3:12 a.m. when my phone lit up the darkness of my bedroom. I'd been having trouble sleeping that night. Now I wonder if it was some kind of premonition. The text came from my mother's phone, but the message was so cold and formal, I initially thought someone must have stolen her phone. "Jessica, after much discussion, we've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings or contact us. We're done." My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone twice trying to call her back. Straight to voicemail. I tried my dad. Voicemail. Ryan. Voicemail. Even Katie. Voicemail. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart pounding so hard I felt physically ill. The room seemed to spin as I tried to make sense of what was happening. I checked Facebook and Instagram with trembling fingers, only to discover I'd been blocked by every member of my family. Even cousins I barely spoke to had somehow blocked me in the middle of the night. At 4:27 a.m., I texted my best friend Allison. "Something terrible has happened. Can you come over? Please." Allison arrived at my apartment 30 minutes later in pajama pants and a sweatshirt, her hair hastily pulled into a messy bun. She found me sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by old family photos I'd pulled from a box in my closet. "I don't understand," I kept saying, showing her the text. "Everything was normal at dinner. Everything was fine." "This doesn't make any sense," Allison said, reading the message for the third time. "People don't just disown family members out of the blue, especially not at 3 a.m. by text. Could someone have hacked her account? Or maybe it's a really horrible prank." We spent the next few hours going through recent interactions with my family, looking for clues. I recalled every word, every glance, every potential slight from the previous night's dinner. "There was one weird moment," I said, hugging a cushion to my chest. "When I went upstairs to use the bathroom, I came back down and Mom and Katie were whispering about something. They stopped when I walked in. But that happens all the time. They're always gossiping." Allison helped me compose careful messages to each family member, asking for an explanation. None were delivered. I'd been blocked on every platform and phone number. "You need to eat something and try to rest," Allison insisted around 8 a.m. "I'll stay with you today. Call in sick." But I couldn't imagine sitting alone in my apartment with my thoughts spinning out of control. Work would be a distraction. I showered, put on makeup to hide my puffy eyes, and went to the office. I couldn't hide my distress from my coworkers. Rachel noticed immediately when I nearly burst into tears after she asked about my weekend. Marcus, my project partner, found me staring blankly at my computer screen instead of working on our presentation. By lunchtime, my boss Lauren called me into her office. "Jessica, whatever's going on, you need to take care of yourself," she said kindly but firmly. "Take emergency leave. We'll manage the Henderson project." Back at home, I decided to try more distant family members. Maybe they could shed some light on what had happened. My father's sister, Aunt Diane, had always been kind to me. She actually answered her phone, but her voice was ice cold. "Jessica, I'm surprised you'd call me. Aunt Diane, please. I don't know what's happening. Mom sent me this text saying I'm not part of the family anymore and no one will talk to me." There was a long pause. "You know what you did, Jessica. I can't believe you'd call me after what you did. Your poor mother is devastated." But what did I do? I was practically screaming now. "Please, just tell me what I supposedly did. Don't play innocent, it doesn't suit you." And she hung up. I sank to the floor, more confused and devastated than ever. What could I possibly have done that was so terrible my entire extended family knew about it? But I didn't. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and confusion. I couldn't eat or sleep. Derek came over every evening after work, bringing food I couldn't stomach and offering comfort I couldn't fully accept. How could I explain to him that my entire family had cut me off without explanation when I didn't understand it myself? "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he promised, holding me as I cried. "But you need to prepare yourself. Sometimes families do inexplicable, hurtful things." I wasn't ready to accept that. There had to be an explanation, some misunderstanding that could be cleared up. The Mitchells had problems, but we didn't just disown people without reason, did we? On the 7th day after receiving the text, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. The return address was my parents' home. My hands trembled so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a formal letter on my father's business stationery. "Jessica, this is to formally inform you that you are no longer welcome in our home or at any family events. Your theft of your grandmother's diamond earrings, valued at $15,000, from your mother's jewelry room during your last visit, has been documented by our home security system. We have clear footage of you entering the room and leaving with the earrings in your possession. These earrings were meant to be worn by Amanda at her wedding as her something borrowed and have significant sentimental value to our family beyond their monetary worth. While we could pursue criminal charges, we have decided against this course of action provided you maintain your distance from the family. Any attempt to contact us or attend family functions will result in us reconsidering this decision. Thomas Mitchell." I read the letter 5 times, each time feeling more confused and horrified. Grandmother's diamond earrings? I hadn't even known they were missing. I had no idea what they looked like. And security footage? My father had installed a system years ago after a break-in down the street, but as far as I knew, they never actually used it. I called Allison immediately and read her the letter. "This is insane," she said. "You didn't take any earrings." "Of course I didn't. But they think they have proof. They think they have me on camera." I tried to remember every detail of my visit to my parents' house. I had gone upstairs to use the bathroom, and yes, I'd walked past my mother's bedroom where she kept her jewelry, but I certainly hadn't gone in, let alone stolen anything. With shaking hands, I composed an email to my father, the more reasonable of my parents, the one who might actually listen. "Dad, I did not take grandmother's earrings. I didn't even know they were missing. I never went into Mom's jewelry room. Please review the footage again. It must be showing something else or someone else. This is a huge misunderstanding. Please talk to me. Jessica." His response came within an hour. "The footage doesn't lie. Don't contact us again." I stared at those 8 cold words from the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had clapped the loudest at my college graduation despite his disapproval of my major. Could he really believe I was a thief? My boss, Lauren, extended my emergency leave when I called her in tears, unable to explain the situation but clearly still in crisis. Derek suggested I talk to a therapist, concerned about my deteriorating mental and physical state. I'd lost 7 pounds in a week, and dark circles had taken up permanent residence under my eyes. Alone in my apartment, I found myself questioning my own memory. Was it possible I had taken the earrings without realizing it? Had I somehow blacked out and done something completely out of character? I'd heard of sleepwalking, but sleep stealing? No. This was ridiculous. I hadn't taken anything. But if I hadn't, who had? And why was I being blamed? Allison came over that evening with pizza and determination. "You need to stop doubting yourself and start fighting back," she said firmly. "Someone is setting you up, and we're going to figure out who and why." Looking into her confident eyes, I felt the first glimmer of hope in days. Someone had framed me, and I was going to prove it. Allison and I turned my living room into what looked like a scene from a detective show. We pinned a timeline to my wall, listing every interaction with family members in the weeks leading up to the accusation. We noted who was present at the dinner, who might have had access to the jewelry room, and who stood to gain from my removal from the family. "We need to talk to someone who might give us more information," Allison said. "Someone who might be sympathetic or at least willing to hear you out." I thought of my cousin Amanda. We'd been close as children before growing apart in our teens, but we'd reconnected somewhat in recent years through social media. And this whole situation involved her wedding. After all, the earrings were supposedly meant for her. I couldn't call or text her, so I sent a message through her work email, which I'd used once before to coordinate a birthday surprise for her mother. Amanda, I need to talk to you about what's happening with our family. It's important. Please meet me. I'm not what they're saying I am. To my surprise, she agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between her office and my apartment. She looked uncomfortable when she arrived, glancing around as if worried someone might see us together. I shouldn't be here, she said immediately. If Aunt Barbara found out. Amanda, please. I didn't take those earrings. I swear on grandmother's life. She studied my face for a long moment. The whole family's talking about it. About how the security footage shows you clear as day. Have you seen this footage? I asked, leaning forward. She hesitated. Well, no. Uncle Thomas told my dad about it. No one's actually seen it except your parents. That was interesting. So everyone's just taking their word for it? Amanda shifted uncomfortably. Why would they lie about something like that? And why would they have security cameras if they weren't going to use them? I don't know, I admitted, but I do know I didn't take anything. Those earrings were meant for your wedding, right? Did you ever actually see them? No, she said slowly. Aunt Barbara described them to me. They belonged to Grandma Grace. Diamond drops with sapphire accents. They're supposed to be my something borrowed, she said. Amanda trailed off, looking uncertain. What? What did she say? She said they were being reset slightly to match my dress better. I was supposed to see them next week. I felt a chill run through me. Amanda, when did my mom tell you about these earrings? About 3 months ago, when we went shopping for my wedding jewelry. Around the same time I'd introduced Derek to the family. Around the same time my mother's disapproval had escalated from passive-aggressive comments to outright criticism. Amanda had one more piece of information that made my stomach turn. There's been another change to the wedding party. Katie is now my maid of honor. But you asked your college roommate to be your maid of honor? I said, confused. She had to drop out, family emergency. Aunt Barbara suggested Katie take her place. Amanda wouldn't meet my eyes. You were going to be a bridesmaid. But now I was persona non grata. Convenient timing for Katie to move up in the wedding hierarchy. After Amanda left, I called Derek. I need to see this supposed security footage, I told him. I'm driving to Connecticut tomorrow. Not alone you're not, he insisted. I'm coming with you. The next morning, we made the 2-hour drive to my parents' house. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel as we turned onto the familiar maple-lined street where I'd grown up. Several neighbors were out. Mrs. Peterson walking her corgi. Mr. Wilson mowing his lawn. They both did double takes when they saw me, then quickly looked away. The news of my disgrace had clearly made the neighborhood rounds. I parked in front of my parents' house rather than pulling into the driveway. I no longer felt welcome enough to do even that. Derek squeezed my hand reassuringly as we approached the front door. I was raising my hand to knock when the door flew open. My mother stood there, her face a mask of cold fury. How dare you show up here, she hissed. After what you did. Mom, I didn't take anything. Please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. We have you on camera, Jessica. Now leave before I call the police. Then show me this footage, I challenged. If it's so clear, show it to me. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty? Fear? But it was gone in an instant. I don't have to show you anything. And who is this? She asked, looking at Derek with thinly veiled disdain. I'm Derek Williams, Jessica's boyfriend, he said calmly, extending his hand. I think there's been a misunderstanding that we could clear up if we just talked. My mother ignored his hand. The only misunderstanding was my belief that I raised an honest daughter. Now get off my property before I call the police and report both of you for harassment. As if on cue, a car pulled into the driveway. Katie stepped out, shopping bags in hand. She froze when she saw us, her expression cycling from shock to something that looked almost like guilt before settling into a sneer. What is she doing here? She called to our mother. "She's just leaving," Mom replied coldly. But in that brief moment, I'd seen something that made my suspicions crystallize. Katie was wearing a brand new designer coat I'd seen in a magazine, one that cost well over $2,000. And the shopping bags she carried were from high-end stores she definitely couldn't afford on her entry-level PR salary. Derek had to practically drag me back to the car as my mother slammed the door. "They're hiding something," I told him as we drove away. "And I think Katie is involved." I couldn't afford to hire a private investigator, but Allison had a contact. Her college roommate Diana had become a PI, specializing in insurance fraud cases. She agreed to help us at a reduced rate after hearing my story. If you've ever wondered what it's like to have your entire world turned against you based on a lie, I can tell you it's the most isolating feeling imaginable. The investigation process was agonizingly slow, and there were days I almost gave up. But something kept pushing me forward. The need to clear my name, yes, but also to understand why my own family would do this to me. Diana worked quickly and efficiently. Within a week, she'd uncovered some interesting financial information. Katie, who made barely $40,000 a year at her PR job, had recently paid off a credit card with a $12,000 balance. She'd also made several large cash deposits to her checking account in the weeks after the family dinner. "It could be a coincidence," Diana said when she showed me her findings, "but in my experience, when someone suddenly has money they can't explain right after a valuable item goes missing." "She set me up," I whispered, the reality of my sister's betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. My own sister framed me for theft. But why would my parents believe her over me? Unless... "Is there any way to find out if these earrings ever actually existed?" I asked Diana. "Or if they were ever reported missing to an insurance company?" Diana promised to look into it, and 2 days later, she had an answer that changed everything. "There was no insurance claim filed for missing diamond earrings," she reported. "But I found something interesting in your grandmother's estate inventory from when your grandfather died 5 years ago. There is a listing for diamond drop earrings with sapphire accents, appraised value $15,000. They were specifically bequeathed to you on your 30th birthday." "To me?" I was stunned. "But I'm only 28. According to the will, your grandmother wanted you to have them because you were the only one who appreciated beauty beyond its monetary value. They're supposed to be held in trust by your parents until you turn 30. The pieces were falling into place. Katie had always been jealous of my relationship with our grandmother, who had encouraged my artistic interests while everyone else in the family dismissed them. And now Katie had somehow discovered the earrings were meant for me, not her. "I need proof," I said firmly. "Proof that Katie took the earrings, or proof that they were never stolen at all." The weeks leading up to Amanda's wedding were a blur of preparation and anxiety. Diana continued her investigation, following Katie and documenting her unusually lavish spending. She also discovered that the security system at my parents' house hadn't been functioning for over a year. My father had disconnected it after too many false alarms. The supposed footage of me stealing the earrings couldn't possibly exist. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed the earrings themselves. "The only way to prove they weren't stolen is to find them," I told Allison and Derek as we finalized our plan. "And if Katie sold them, I need proof of that transaction." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Derek asked gently. "Confronting your family at the wedding could burn bridges permanently." I laughed bitterly. "What bridges? They've already disowned me based on a lie. I have nothing to lose." The plan was simple but risky. I knew from Amanda that the wedding would be at the Rosewood, an exclusive venue in Hartford. The ceremony was at 4 p.m., with a reception to follow. According to Diana's intelligence gathered from the wedding planner's assistant in exchange for concert tickets, Katie would be wearing the family heirlooms as the maid of honor, including a certain pair of diamond and sapphire earrings that had mysteriously reappeared. She probably told Mom she found them, I theorized, or convinced her that the new ones are identical replicas. On the day of the wedding, Allison helped me prepare. I chose a simple black dress, funeral appropriate, I thought bitterly, and styled my hair to be as unobtrusive as possible. Derek would be my support and backup, waiting in the car during the ceremony and joining me at the reception. "Remember, wait until she's wearing the earrings," Allison reminded me. You need visual evidence. And try not to get arrested, Derek added, only half joking. I arrived at the Rosewood just as guests were being seated for the ceremony. Slipping in through a side entrance, I found a spot behind a large floral arrangement where I could observe without being seen. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure someone would hear it. The ceremony began with the traditional processional. Amanda looked beautiful in her white gown, but my eyes were fixed on the bridesmaids. Katie came last as maid of honor, wearing the pale blue dress I'd seen in Amanda's wedding plans months ago. And dangling from her ears were exquisite diamond drops with sapphire accents, earrings I'd never seen before, earrings that were supposed to be mine in 2 years, earrings I'd been accused of stealing. I took several photos with my phone, zooming in as much as possible. Then I waited, watching as my family celebrated without me, all smiles and congratulations while I hid like a criminal. The ceremony ended, and guests moved to the cocktail hour before the reception. I texted Derek that it was time. We entered the reception together, his hand steady on my back. I spotted my mother first, holding court among her friends near the gift table. My father was at the bar, looking tired. Ryan and Meredith were dancing already, and Katie was posing for photos with Amanda, the earrings catching the light with every turn of her head. We waited until the formal dinner was served and the toasts were completed. Then, as the band started playing and guests began to dance, I made my move. I walked directly to the head table where Katie was sitting with the other bridesmaids. Derek 2 steps behind me. The first person to notice me was Amanda, whose eyes widened in shock. Then a ripple of recognition spread through the nearby tables as conversations halted mid-sentence. Jessica? Katie's voice was high with panic. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. I'm here to clear my name, I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, and to reclaim what rightfully belongs to me. My mother appeared as if from nowhere, her face flushed with anger. You need to leave immediately, she hissed. Not until everyone knows the truth, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The earrings Katie's wearing? They were never stolen. I never took them. Katie's hand went reflexively to her ear. These aren't even Grandma's earrings, she said quickly. These are replicas Mom had made for the wedding. That's interesting, I said, pulling out my phone, because I have proof that Grandma's earrings were left to me in her will, to receive on my 30th birthday. And I also have proof that our security system hasn't been functioning for over a year, so there couldn't possibly be footage of me stealing anything. The color drained from Katie's face. My mother stepped between us. This is preposterous. You're making a scene at your cousin's wedding based on some delusion. It's not a delusion, Barbara, Derek said, speaking up for the first time. We have the estate documents and confirmation from your security company. By now, a crowd had gathered. My father pushed through, looking confused and angry. What's going on here? I had those earrings authenticated yesterday, I announced, looking directly at Katie. A jeweler confirmed they're the originals, not replicas. The same ones I supposedly stole. Katie's composure cracked. You don't understand, she blurted. I found them. They were just misplaced. After you told everyone I stole them? I challenged. After I was cut off from my entire family based on your lie? I didn't, Katie began. But her voice faltered as she looked around at the sea of confused faces. Katie, my father said slowly, what is Jessica talking about? You said you saw her take the earrings. The silence that followed was deafening. Katie's expression cycled through panic, defiance, and finally, defeat. They were supposed to be mine, she burst out. I'm the one who stayed close to family. I'm the one who did everything right. But Grandma still loved her more, still left her precious earrings to Jessica just because she's artistic or whatever. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Katie, what have you done? She whispered. Nothing you didn't help with, Katie shot back, tears streaming down her face. You were so ready to believe the worst of Jessica. You wanted her gone because of her boyfriend, because she doesn't fit your perfect family image. Don't pretend you're shocked now. My father was staring at my mother in horror. Barbara? Did you know about this? Before she could answer, Amanda stepped forward, shaking with fury. You've ruined my wedding day with this? This family soap opera? Over some earrings? I'm so sorry, Amanda, I began. But she cut me off with a raised hand. All of you, just go. Now. I can't believe this is happening. Within moments, security guards appeared at my side. Ma'am, we need you to leave the premises, one said firmly. Me? But I didn't, I protested, looking around for support. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother was comforting a sobbing Katie. Only Derek stood by me, his hand closing protectively around mine. It's okay, he murmured. You've said what you needed to say. The truth is out. As security escorted us out, I glanced back to see my family in disarray, the wedding guests whispering and staring. I'd gotten my vindication, but at what cost? In the parking lot, Derek held me as I finally broke down. They knew, I sobbed against his shoulder. Mom knew Katie was lying and she went along with it. She wanted me gone. I know, he said softly, stroking my hair. I know. But you stood up for yourself. And now everyone else knows the truth too. I nodded, wiping my tears. The truth was out, but it wasn't the victory I'd imagined. It felt hollow and sad. The final confirmation that the family I'd been fighting to return to wasn't worth saving after all. The aftermath of the wedding confrontation was like watching a nuclear fallout in slow motion. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from my immediate family, though the extended family grapevine was buzzing. Aunt Diane called to apologize profusely for believing the worst about me. 2 cousins sent supportive text messages. Amanda, understandably, wasn't speaking to any of us. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, an email arrived from my father. Jessica, I owe you an apology that I'm not sure how to adequately express. I believed the worst about you without proper evidence, and for that, I am deeply ashamed. I should have questioned more, investigated further, and most importantly, I should have given you the chance to defend yourself. The family is in turmoil now. Your mother is struggling to accept her role in this deception. Katie has admitted to everything. Finding out about the earrings in your grandmother's will, staging their disappearance, and convincing your mother that you had taken them. She maintains that she truly believed you had looked through Grandma's papers and already knew they were meant for you, which is why you would want to take them early. I know an apology isn't enough, but I hope it might be a start. Dad. I read the email several times, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately. He was my dad, after all. Another part felt it was too little, too late. Where was this skepticism when it mattered? Where was this fatherly protection when I was being cast out? I didn't respond right away. I needed time to process, to decide what I wanted my relationship with my family to look like moving forward, if I wanted one at all. My mother's email came 3 days later, less apologetic and more defensive. Jessica, I hope you're satisfied with the scene you created at Amanda's wedding. While I acknowledge that Katie's actions were wrong, your response was equally inappropriate. Family matters should be handled privately. I've always wanted what's best for you, even if you couldn't see it. I worry about your choices, your career path, and yes, your relationship with Derek. Not because of his race, as you've unfairly implied, but because of the complications of blended families. We should talk when things have calmed down. Mom. Her email confirmed what I'd always known but never wanted to admit. My mother's love was conditional on me being the person she wanted me to be. Katie didn't contact me directly, but according to Aunt Diane, she'd been forced to return the earrings to our father for safekeeping until my 30th birthday. She'd also moved back home, having been asked to leave her apartment, which, it turned out, our parents had been subsidizing heavily. Your father has barely spoken to your mother in 2 weeks, Aunt Diane told me during one of our now regular phone calls. He's sleeping in the guest room. I've never seen him stand up to her like this. The family had split into factions. Team Jessica included Aunt Diane, 2 uncles, and several cousins who had always felt judged by my mother. Team Katie, divided by Barbara, consisted of my mother's siblings and friends who believed Katie had made a youthful mistake and that I had overreacted. Ryan and Meredith were trying to stay neutral, though Ryan had called once to awkwardly say he was sorry about how things went down. The most surprising call came from my grandmother, Grace Mitchell, who resided in a nursing home about an hour from my parents' house. She was 87 and had been suffering from early-stage dementia for several years, which was why I hadn't thought to contact her directly during this ordeal. "Jessica, my darling girl," she said when I answered, her voice frailer than I remembered but still warm. "I've been hearing some disturbing things from Diane. Something about my diamond earrings?" Sitting on my couch with tears streaming down my face, I told her everything. Unlike everyone else in the family, she never once doubted my innocence. "I always knew Katie had sticky fingers," she said matter-of-factly. "She took my pearl bracelet when she was 14, then claimed she found it in the sofa cushions. And my silver compact disappeared after her visit last Easter." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, astonished. "At my age, dear, you pick your battles. But this has gone too far. Those earrings were always meant for you. You have your grandfather's artistic eye and my appreciation for beauty beyond price tags." She paused, then added, "Barbara never understood that. She counts worth in dollars and social standing. Always has." Grandmother confirmed what Diana had uncovered. The earrings were specifically left to me in her will. They were my mother's before me. I wanted them to go to someone who would love them for their history, not just their value. The conversation with my grandmother healed something in me. Here was the one person in my family who had always seen me clearly and loved me unconditionally. It made me realize that while blood might connect us to people, it's understanding and acceptance that make a true family. Meanwhile, my father was trying. He called every few days, awkward but persistent. He asked about my work, my apartment, even Derek. He was making an effort to know me as I was, not as he wished I would be. "Your mother has always been the one who managed family relationships," he admitted during one call. "I let her set the tone because it was easier. I see now how wrong that was." Amanda finally broke her silence a month after her wedding. Her email was terse but not unkind. "Jessica, the wedding video turned out beautiful despite the drama. If you'd like to see it, let me know. The photographer caught some candid shots of you and Derek that actually turned out well. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. I'd take it." The most significant change came when my grandmother announced she was moving to a senior living facility in Chicago, just 20 minutes from my apartment. "I'm tired of Connecticut winters anyway," she said when I expressed surprise. "And this way I can see my favorite granddaughter whenever I want." My mother was livid about the move, seeing it as grandmother taking sides. My father helped with the arrangements, another small act of independence from a man who had spent decades deferring to his wife. The day grandmother moved in, I visited with Derek and his daughter Zoe. The three of us helped unpack her treasured photos and knickknacks, arranging her new apartment to resemble her old home as much as possible. "You must be Zoe," grandmother said, smiling at the shy 7-year-old. "Jessica tells me you're quite the artist." Zoe nodded, clutching her sketchbook. "I like to draw animals." "Well, I have just the thing for a fellow artist." Grandmother opened a small box and pulled out a delicate silver chain with a paintbrush charm. "This was Jessica's when she was about your age. Perhaps you'd like it now?" As I watched Zoe's face light up, I realized that family, true family, could be rebuilt and reclaimed, even from the ashes of betrayal. "Tell me about the moment you received that text message," Dr. Landon said, her voice gentle but direct. "How did it make you feel?" I'd been seeing Dr. Landon for 3 months now, working through the trauma of my family's betrayal and subsequent reconciliation attempts. Therapy had been Derek's suggestion, and initially, I'd resisted. The Mitchell family didn't air their dirty laundry to strangers, as my mother would say. But I wasn't playing by the Mitchell family rules anymore. "Physically ill," I answered honestly, like someone had punched me in the stomach, but also confused, like the world had suddenly stopped making sense. And now, looking back at that moment, I considered the question sad, but also grateful in a weird way. It was like being forced to see something I'd been avoiding my whole life, that my family's love was conditional. The journey of the past several months had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The Jessica who had received that text message was desperate for her family's approval, willing to endure subtle cruelty and judgment just to maintain the connection. The Jessica sitting in this therapist's office had learned to set boundaries, to recognize toxic patterns, and to build a life filled with people who accepted her completely. My relationship with Derek had deepened through the crisis. He had seen me at my absolute worst, sobbing uncontrollably, consumed by anger, paralyzed with doubt, and he had stayed. Not just stayed, but supported, advocated, and loved. "You're the strongest person I know," he told me one night as we lay in bed, the moonlight casting shadows across his face. "The way you fought for the truth, even when everyone was against you." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "Most days, I feel like I'm just figuring things out as I go." "That's what being strong is," he said, pulling me closer. "Continuing to move forward even when you don't have all the answers." 2 months after the wedding confrontation, Derek asked if Zoe and I would consider moving in with him. His apartment was larger than mine and in a better school district for Zoe. But it was more than a practical decision. It was the creation of our own family unit. Chosen rather than inherited. "Are you sure?" I asked Zoe seriously when Derek first brought up the idea. "I know it's a big change." She considered the question with the seriousness only a 7-year-old can muster. "Will you help me with my art projects?" "Daddy tries, but he's not very good." "Hey," Derek protested, laughing. "I would be honored to help with your art projects," I promised. "And maybe we could turn the spare room into a little studio for both of us?" Her enthusiastic nod sealed the deal. The weekend we moved my things into their apartment was one of the happiest of my life. No drama, no judgment. Just 3 people building something new together. Professionally, I was thriving as well. Lauren had promoted me to lead designer after the Henderson project exceeded expectations. With the distraction of family drama removed, I found new creative energy and focus. My portfolio expanded, and I started taking on occasional freelance projects that fed my artistic side more than corporate work could. Setting boundaries with my family was an ongoing process. My father and I had established a tentative new relationship, meeting for lunch every few weeks when he was in Chicago on business. These meetings were sometimes awkward but increasingly genuine. He was making an effort to know me, the real me, not the daughter he had imagined I should be. "I've been looking at your website," he said during one lunch. "Your work is impressive. I don't think I ever really understood what you do before." Coming from him, it was a monumental admission. Thomas Mitchell, who had spent years dismissing my career as a hobby, was finally seeing value in my chosen path. My mother was a different story. Her emails and rare phone calls remained filled with subtle digs and passive-aggressive comments. I had learned to respond with polite neutrality, neither engaging with her barbs nor allowing them to wound me as they once had. "She may never change," Dr. Landon warned me. "Are you prepared for that possibility?" "I am," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I can accept her as she is without allowing her to define me. Katie and I had exchanged a few cautious text messages. She had sent an apology that seemed genuine if incomplete. "I'm sorry for what I did. I was jealous and stupid. I don't expect forgiveness, but wanted you to know. I wasn't ready to rebuild that relationship yet, but I no longer carried the burning anger I once had." The most meaningful relationship I'd reclaimed was with my grandmother. Grace Mitchell moved into the Willows Senior Living community in late November, and I visited her several times a week. We talked about art, about family history, about her life growing up in rural Vermont. She shared stories I'd never heard, showed me photographs I'd never seen. It was like discovering a part of my heritage that had been kept from me. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," she told me one afternoon as we sorted through her old photographs. "He was an artist too, you know. Not professionally. He worked at the bank all his life, but his photography was his passion." She handed me a black and white photograph of a sunset over a lake, the composition striking in its simplicity and impact. "I had no idea," I said, studying the photo with new appreciation. "No one ever mentioned this." "Your mother thought art was a waste of time," Grandmother said with a sigh. "So many things were lost between generations in our family. So many connections broken." During one of her lucid days, Grandmother formally transferred guardianship of several family heirlooms to me, including the infamous diamond earrings. "I want you to have them now," she said firmly. "Not in 2 years, not after I'm gone. Now, are you sure? I asked, touched by the gesture. After everything that's happened. Especially after everything that's happened, she insisted. These things are just objects, Jessica. But they carry our stories, our memories. I want them with someone who understands that. The earrings were beautiful. Vintage diamond drops with delicate sapphire accents, set in white gold. But their true value lay in what they represented. My grandmother's love and confidence in me, strong enough to survive even the worst family storm. My friendship with Allison had grown even stronger through the ordeal. She had never doubted me, never wavered in her support. Family isn't always who you're born to, she told me over wine one evening. Sometimes it's who stands by you when everyone else walks away. Looking around at the life I was building, with Derek and Zoe, with grandmother, with friends like Allison, I realized I had never felt more surrounded by true family. 1 year after receiving that devastating text message, I found myself preparing Thanksgiving dinner in the kitchen of the home I shared with Derek and Zoe. The apartment was filled with the scent of roasting turkey and pumpkin pie. Zoe was setting the table with careful precision, counting out forks and placing napkins just so. "Is this right?" she asked, standing back to inspect her work. "Perfect," I assured her. "You're an excellent hostess." Our guest list was small but meaningful. My grandmother, my father, Aunt Diane, 2 cousins who had stood by me, and Allison with her new boyfriend. A chosen family gathered around our table. My mother had declined the invitation, as I'd expected. Katie had not been invited at all. That wound was still too fresh, though perhaps someday that would change. The night before Thanksgiving, I received a letter from Katie, an actual handwritten letter, not an email or text. Inside was a multi-page confession and apology that felt more genuine than anything she'd said before. "Jessica, I've started this letter 100 times over the past year. Nothing I write seems adequate to express how sorry I am for what I did to you. The truth is, I've been jealous of you for as long as I can remember. You were always so confident in who you were, so sure of your path. You left Connecticut while I stayed safe in Mom's orbit. You built a career doing what you love, while I took a job Mom arranged for me. You found someone who adores you for exactly who you are, while I've been dating men Mom approves of. When I found out about Grandma's will, something broke in me. It felt like final confirmation that you were her favorite. Just like you were Dad's favorite. Just like you were everyone's favorite, despite never following the rules. None of that justifies what I did. I destroyed our relationship and damaged our entire family because I couldn't face my own failures and insecurities. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not the counseling with Mom's church friend. I'm trying to figure out who I am apart from being Barbara Mitchell's daughter. It's harder than I expected. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response to this letter. But I wanted you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I did, and I am truly, deeply sorry. Kate C. I placed the letter in my bedside drawer, not yet ready to respond, but feeling a small knot inside me begin to loosen. The next morning, as our Thanksgiving guests began to arrive, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. My father arrived first, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. "Happy Thanksgiving," he said, hugging me awkwardly but sincerely. He had lost weight over the past year, and there was a new confidence in his bearing. The separation from my mother, still not a formal divorce, but a significant distancing, had changed him. "This is for you," he said, handing me the gift bag. I found it in the attic last week. Inside was a small, worn sketchbook. I opened it to find childish drawings signed with my crooked signature, age 7. "You used to draw all the time," he said softly. "I'd forgotten that until recently." Grandmother arrived next, moving slowly with her walker but beaming with excitement. "Something smells delicious," she announced. "Tell me you made sweet potato casserole with the little marshmallows on top." "Of course," I laughed. I wouldn't dare mess with tradition. Derek moved among our guests with easy charm, making everyone feel welcome. Zoe proudly showed my father and grandmother her latest art projects. Aunt Diane brought her famous apple cider, and my cousins arrived with board games for after dinner. Allison and her boyfriend came last, bringing a chocolate pecan pie that looked professional despite being homemade. As we gathered around the table, I looked at these people who had chosen to be here, who had chosen to stand by me or find their way back to me. This was what family should be. Not perfect, not without conflict, but fundamentally accepting and supportive. My father raised his glass. To new traditions, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And to truth, grandmother added firmly, may we always seek it, even when it's difficult. To family, Derek said, his eyes meeting mine across the table. The one we've built together. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Katie asking if we could meet. After considerable thought, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between my workplace and her apartment. I asked Derek to come with me, not as a buffer but as support. Katie looked smaller somehow when she walked into the cafe, less certain than the sister I remembered. She hesitated when she saw Derek, then straightened her shoulders and approached our table. Thank you for meeting me, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Your letter meant a lot, I replied honestly. It seemed like you're doing some real work on yourself. I am trying, she said. It's not easy. Mom isn't supportive of the therapy. She thinks family matters should stay private. Some things need to be brought into the light to heal, I said. For the next hour, we talked more honestly than we ever had before. Katie spoke about growing up in my shadow, always feeling second best. I shared how isolated I'd felt as the family misfit, how much her betrayal had hurt coming from the sister I'd always tried to protect. I don't know if we can ever be close again, I told her finally. But I'm willing to try building something new. Slowly. I'd like that, she said, a tear sliding down her cheek. I miss my sister. As winter turned to spring, I found myself planning another family gathering, my wedding to Derek. We'd decided on a small ceremony in the botanical garden where we'd had our third date. Zoe would be my junior bridesmaid, proudly wearing the silver paintbrush necklace grandmother had given her. I would wear my grandmother's diamond and sapphire earrings, not as something borrowed but as something that was rightfully mine, a symbol of heritage and resilience. My mother had reluctantly agreed to attend, though she continued to criticize every detail of our plans. Katie would come as a guest, not part of the wedding party, another small step in our tentative reconciliation. The most surprising development was my father's transformation. He had finally filed for divorce, moved into his own apartment, and started dating a kind widow he'd met at a community jazz concert. He seemed decades younger, laughing more easily, speaking more freely. I spent 30 years trying to be who your mother wanted me to be, he told me over lunch. I don't recognize that man anymore. As I prepared for the wedding, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past 18 months. That devastating text message, "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family," had ultimately freed me to create a truer, healthier family of my own. The final piece of resolution came in the form of another text message, this one from my mother the night before my wedding. Jessica, I may not understand all your choices, but you are still my daughter. I'll see you tomorrow. Mom. No apology, no real acknowledgement of past wrongs. But coming from Barbara Mitchell, it was practically a declaration of unconditional love. I read it with a small smile, no longer needing her approval but accepting this small olive branch for what it was. Standing in our bedroom, I held up the diamond earrings to the light, watching them sparkle. Once, they had been at the center of a family explosion that had nearly destroyed us all. Now, they were simply beautiful objects with a complicated history, much like family itself. The journey from that 3 a.m. text to this moment had been painful, but necessary. I had lost the family I thought I needed and found the family I truly deserved. I had learned that blood ties can be the weakest bonds if not supported by respect and acceptance. And most importantly, I had discovered that sometimes being cut from a poisonous family tree is the beginning of putting down healthier roots. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes, the most painful moments lead to our greatest growth. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more authentic family stories. And remember, family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who stands by you when everyone else walks away. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and transformation. Until next time,